The champagne flute shattered against the hardwood floor, crystal fragments catching the Christmas lights like tiny daggers. My sister Ashley's hand was still raised from striking my baby, her manicured fingers trembling as the room went dead silent. Rowan's scream pierced through the sudden hush, but what hit me harder was the sound of my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. Nobody moved. Not my mother Patricia, not my father Robert. They just stared at me, waiting for what they'd trained me to do my whole life. Apologize, shrink back, make this easier for everyone else. My name is Emma. I'm 32 and a documentary researcher. This is the story of how I finally stopped making myself invisible. The taste of copper filled my mouth as I processed what had just happened. My 6-month-old son, who'd been peacefully sleeping in my arms during our family's Christmas dinner, now had a red mark blooming across his tiny cheek. Ashley stood there in her designer dress, breathing hard like she'd just finished a workout. "He was fussing during my story," she said, voice defensive but not apologetic. "Someone needed to do something." My husband David shifted beside me, and I felt the air in the room change. When he stood up, his chair scraped against the floor with deliberate slowness. The sound cut through the silence like a warning. "Get out," he said quietly, looking directly at Ashley. The words hung in the air like smoke from a blown candle. Ashley's mouth fell open, then snapped shut. She looked around the table for backup, for someone to defend her, to make me the problem like they always did. "David, that's uncalled for," my mother started, but her voice lacked conviction. "She hit our baby," David replied, his tone steady but razor sharp. "At Christmas dinner, while he was sleeping." He paused, letting each word settle. "Get out of our house." For the first time in 32 years, someone had defended me without asking me to explain myself first. Growing up, I learned to be small before I learned to walk. My earliest memory is standing behind my grandmother's dining room chairs, while Ashley got positioned in the center of every family photo. I was always the extra one, the child who needed to step back so the real family could shine. Ashley was 2 years older and born with the kind of confidence that filled rooms. When she wanted something, she took it. When I wanted something, I was told to wait my turn, a turn that somehow never came. At 10, I won a statewide essay contest. Ashley spilled juice on my certificate by accident, and instead of congratulating me, Mom spent 20 minutes comforting Ashley because she felt so bad about the mess. The certificate was ruined, but what hurt more was watching my achievement become about my sister's feelings. This pattern followed me through high school, college, and into adulthood. When Ashley needed money for spring break, I was told to contribute from my part-time job earnings. When I needed a ride to my scholarship interview, they forgot twice. The third time, Dad simply said, "Figure it out." I learned that my needs came second, third, or not at all. I learned that speaking up meant being dramatic. I learned that my silence was the price of keeping everyone else comfortable. But sitting there with my baby's cry echoing through the Christmas dinner silence, something inside me finally cracked open. After David's ultimatum, Ashley grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. She paused in the doorway, turning back with her signature wounded expression. "You always overreact, Emma," she said, aiming the words like arrows. "It wasn't even that hard. He's being dramatic, too." My mother nodded slightly, unconsciously supporting Ashley even now. "Maybe we should all calm down and—" "No." The word came out of me firm and clear. "We're leaving." I stood up, still holding Rowan, feeling the weight of 32 years of accumulated silence lifting off my shoulders. David was already gathering our coats, moving with purpose. "Emma, don't make this bigger than it is," Dad said, using the exact phrase he'd used throughout my childhood. I looked at him directly for the first time in years. "It is big," I said. "It's always been big. You just taught me to pretend it wasn't." The drive home was quiet except for Rowan's occasional whimpers from the back seat. David reached over and squeezed my hand at a red light. "I should have said something years ago," he said quietly. "You said something when it mattered," I replied, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. At home, after putting Rowan down for his nap, I sat at our kitchen table and opened my laptop. The red mark on his cheek was already fading, but the photograph I'd taken was crystal clear. I saved it to a folder I labeled documentation. For the next 2 hours, I worked methodically. I collected screenshots of family text messages, created a timeline of incidents, and wrote detailed accounts of events I'd spent years trying to forget. I wasn't planning revenge. I was building protection. I drafted an email to our pediatrician asking about protocol for documenting injuries to infants. I researched family law attorneys. I created backup files of everything and stored them in multiple locations. This wasn't about punishment. This was about making sure no one could ever call me dramatic again when it came to protecting my child. 3 days later, my phone rang. Ashley's name flashed on the screen. "Emma, we need to talk," she said without preamble. "Mom says you've been making threats." "I haven't threatened anyone," I replied, setting down my coffee cup carefully. I documented what happened. "You took pictures? Of what?" "Of Rowan's cheek after you hit him." Silence stretched between us. I could hear her breathing change. "It wasn't a big deal, Emma. You're making this into—" "A big deal," I interrupted. "You're right. It is a big deal. It's the biggest deal." She tried a different approach, her voice shifting to the wheedling tone she used when she wanted something. "Come on, we're family. This is just a misunderstanding." "Family doesn't hit babies," I said simply. "And family doesn't spend 30 years making someone feel invisible." I hung up before she could respond. The next call came from my mother an hour later. "Emma, sweetheart, I think you're blowing this out of proportion," she started. "Ashley feels terrible. She was just trying to help with Rowan when he was fussing." "He was sleeping, Mom." "Well, you know Ashley. She's always been protective." "Of who?" The question came out sharper than I intended, because it's never been me. Silence on the other end. Finally, Mom sighed. "What do you want us to do, Emma?" It was the first time in my life anyone in my family had asked me what I wanted. "I want Ashley to acknowledge what she did," I said. "I want a genuine apology, not an excuse, and I want to know it will never happen again." "You're being very demanding." "I'm being a mother." 2 weeks after our phone conversation, I heard a knock at the front door. The conversation with Ashley came after my parents apparently spent days trying to convince her to make things right. She showed up at our front door unannounced, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. "Can I come in?" she asked, her usual confidence notably absent. I let her in but didn't offer coffee or ask her to sit. We stood in the living room while Rowan played on his mat nearby, babbling at his toys. "I'm sorry I hit him," she said quickly, the words tumbling out like she'd rehearsed them. "I shouldn't have done that." I waited. There had to be more. I was just trying to help," she continued, falling back into familiar patterns. "He was crying and you seemed overwhelmed." "Stop." I held up my hand. "He wasn't crying. He was sleeping. And even if he was crying, hitting him isn't helping." She shifted uncomfortably, glancing toward the door like she was calculating escape routes. "I know you think I've always had it easier," she said, changing tactics. "But being the older sister isn't as simple as you think. Mom and Dad put a lot of pressure on me to set a good example." "This isn't about you," I said quietly. "This is about my son, and this is about the fact that you hit him and then tried to make it my fault for overreacting." Ashley's face flushed red. "I said I was sorry. What more do you want?" "I want you to mean it," I replied. "I want you to understand why it was wrong instead of looking for ways to justify it." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her processing this version of me, the version that didn't fold under pressure, didn't apologize for taking up space, didn't make everything easier for everyone else. "Fine," she said finally. "You're right. I was wrong. I hit your baby, and there's no excuse for it. I'm sorry." It wasn't perfect, but it was real. For the first time, Ashley had apologized without making herself the victim. "Thank you," I said. "And if anything like this ever happens again—" "It won't," she said quickly. "I promise it won't." After she left, I sat on the couch with Rowan in my lap, feeling something I'd never experienced before in my family relationships. Respect. Not affection, not automatic forgiveness, but respect. The boundaries I'd built weren't walls meant to keep everyone out forever. They were fences with gates, gates that could open when people proved they deserved access to my life and my child's safety. David came home that evening to find me cooking dinner, humming quietly while Rowan bounced in his high chair. "Good day?" he asked, kissing my temple. "Different day," I replied. "Better day." 6 months later, our family dynamics have changed completely. Ashley asks before picking up Rowan and has consistently stopped making dismissive comments about my parenting decisions. Over the following months, she proved her apology was genuine through her actions, not just her words. My parents now ask about our boundaries before family gatherings and respect our decisions about Rowan's interactions with extended family. The conversations aren't always comfortable, but they're honest. David and I have grown closer through this process, with him taking a more active role in protecting our family's boundaries. We've become a united front in ways we never were before. I'm not the same person who stood silent while her baby got slapped. I'm not the child hiding behind dining room chairs anymore. I'm not invisible. Sometimes people ask me if I regret causing drama over something that lasted 5 seconds. But here's what I learned. Those 5 seconds revealed 32 years of truth. That slap wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of a lifetime of being taught that my feelings, my boundaries, and my child's safety were less important than keeping everyone else comfortable. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. Protecting your child isn't dramatic. Speaking up for yourself isn't selfish. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop shrinking to fit into spaces that were never meant for you anyway. If you're reading this and recognizing yourself in my story, the child who learned to be small, the adult who still apologizes for existing, know that your voice matters. Your boundaries matter. You matter. The day I stopped being invisible was the day I started truly living, and I've never looked back. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.